Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Canadian Bowler Podcast. For me, it's been a while. Mike Patulli, this guy on the other side there, Daryl Fitzgerald. Not quite so long. Couple hours, Daryl, right?
Yeah, it was a late night for sure.
Hopefully got yourself a decent sleep and you're ready to go here.
Had a few drinks after, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us here today. If it's your first time here at the podcast, please do hit the like, comment, subscribe there at the bottom. Any sort of interaction really does help us. So please do click those buttons. We are on YouTube within the day, so you'll be able to check this out after the fact if you're not able to catch it live. And we're also on all major podcasting platforms within the week of the show. So if you want to check it out after the show, after the fact, and you're a podcast person, be there within the week. So we'll get right into it. Obviously, not much to talk about. Nothing really kind of important or anything special happened over the last couple of days, right?
Yeah, not really. Boring.
Well, if you weren't able to check it out last night, we did have a special Q&A session with Bulls Canada, which you'll be able to check out on via our YouTube channel here. So essentially, just click on our main channel link and it'll be one of our last videos. Daryl led that session. How did you enjoy the session last night, Daryl?
I mean, I've got to admit, I was a little nervous as to how it would go. Seeing all the comments on Facebook and all the different threads and people going back and forth. I was figuring chat might be just an explosion of stuff that I'd have to try to read through and figure out. But I think it went really well. Once I got into the flow of reading questions and we're getting answers, I think it just got better and better as we went along. And thank you to everybody that came out to watch it, and to all of those that posed questions. And I know I didn't get to necessarily all of them, and maybe some people had some at the end there when we were closing off, but thank you for asking the questions and being a participant. That's the only way that this stuff works. Having a Q&A and actually getting the Qs for the A's really helps, but hopefully you got enough out of that. And if you have more questions, like we said there, reach out to Bulls Canada. Drop your questions in chat, because Mike and I like to chat about Bulls and all that stuff. So we do have opinions.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting show to watch. Like, I know all week, pretty much me and you were accumulating those questions, or we were scouring the different Facebook pages that there are where people were posting questions. So it was a little bit of a challenging week because we had a lot of questions, and I felt you did a really good job getting the questions together there, because you did ask quite a few questions. It's roughly a 90-minute session that you guys had there, but you answered a lot of questions and made the panel sort of field some difficult questions. So I was happy to see some of those more difficult questions get asked, especially near the end. But before we drop too deep into, I guess, my opinions on the matter, we have other info we wanted to spread this show. So let's maybe do some of our other topics, get them out of the way, and then maybe have a bit more of review or discussion about sort of those changes coming up in 2024. So what other topic do you want to lead with there, Daryl?
Quickly, you can go over multi-nations. It's been a while. We haven't had our regular schedule. With all the stuff going on, we kind of wanted to get that Q&A all set up and ready to go. So we kind of postponed this show until after, and with Easter and everything, it just kind of made sense. So we had multi-nations. The multi-nations took place down in Australia. Quote unquote multi-nations. There was 3 Australian teams in there. So there was Australia yellow, Australia green, and then Queensland, which is obviously Queensland state in Australia. It was mentioned in the Q&A last night, but the state team, not national team, not anything. The state team was super strong. They've got a lot of great bowlers down there, and whether you know them or not, there's people that are super competitive and really quite elite in their game. So without further ado, the multi-nations, we had Australia yellow, Australia green, and Queensland competing. From Australia, Hong Kong, China, Ireland, New Zealand, Norfolk Island, and South Africa. So those were all the teams that were competing. Men's fours, Gold went to Australia Yellow, silver to New Zealand, bronze to Queensland. Women's fours, gold went to Australia Yellow, silver went to Australia Green, and bronze went to New Zealand. Men's triples, gold went to Australia Green, silver to Queensland, bronze to Australia Yellow. Women's trips, gold went to New Zealand, silver to South Africa, and bronze to Australia Green. Men's pairs, gold went to Ireland, silver went to Queensland, and bronze went to New Zealand. And pairs, women's pairs, gold went to New Zealand, silver to Norfolk Island, and bronze to Australia Green. And then in singles, there's a lot of singles. Gold went to Australia Yellow, silver went to Queensland, and bronze went to Ireland in men's singles. And then women's singles, gold Australia Yellow, silver Australia Green, and bronze Queensland. So you can see there's a fair mix, which is really nice. But the dominant was obviously all the Australian teams.
Yeah, no, like when you essentially have three of the teams in the mix there, that's not surprising to see sort of those results.
Also, I forgot I have on flip page because there's so many results. Para, they also had para events, which is really cool. I'm really happy that they've incorporated para into all this. But yeah, the para men's pairs, Australia Green, Australia Yellow, South Africa, that was gold, silver, bronze, and then para women's pairs, Australia Green, New Zealand, and Australia Yellow. And then visually impaired mixed pairs, gold went to South Africa, which is really cool, and then silver and bronze went to Australia Yellow and Australia Green. So a lot of stuff going on there.
Cool. No, like I paid a little bit of attention as it was actually going on, because I sort of, one of the things you pointed out was Queensland was in there. So I found that interesting that they had a state team. John's in the chat saying he thinks it was because another country had to withdraw.
Likely.
So that's why Queensland was in there. But again, obviously, fairly competitive team, winning multiple medals, pretty prolific players in their own right that were able to play for Queensland. So probably filled out that draw nicely and gave all those countries that did travel in there at least another good team to play against, and made that event much more worthwhile for, I guess, tuning up for World Bowls coming up here.
Absolutely.
So we move on. That's about all we had for that topic. You got quite a few other ones. So which one do you want to jump to next, Daryl?
Let's jump to the World Bowls teams. So there's been some announcements of teams that are going to be competing in the World Bowls event down in Australia. I can throw them up here and we can go through them. So Australia announced their women. Ellen Ryan playing singles and pairs. Christina Christic playing pairs and fours. Don Heyman playing trips and fours. Lindsay Clark, trips and fours. And then Kelsey Cottrell, trips and fours. That's a really strong team for the women's side. On the men, we have Aaron Wilson, singles and pairs. Aaron Tees, pairs and fours. Corey Wedlock, triples and fours. Carl Healy, triples and fours. And then Aaron Sheriff, triples and fours. Now, I'm going to ask you this, Mike. I really think Australia dropped the ball when they didn't put all the Aarons on a triples team and call it Team Aaron. That's a lot of Aarons.
That would have been a confusing team to play on, though. Someone says Aaron, and probably all three of them would turn their heads. So that would have been unfortunate. But very good teams, both the men and women's team there. Except for Dawn was the only name on the women's side that I haven't really seen much of her on sort of the Australian side. She was playing in the multi-nations there and obviously put in a good performance, and that's probably a part of why she would have been selected to go to World Bowls here. But a very strong team considering how they did Commonwealth and just how they've done in general in Australia. So good team there. And then the men's side, all of those guys are essentially as Macho Man Randy Savage would say, the cream of the crop. So very excited to see how they end up doing, especially on their home turf. It'll be an interesting event.
And then we have para and visually impaired. So for Australia, we have on the women's para pairs, Cheryl Linfield and Serena Bonnell. And on the men, it's Damian Delgado and James Reynolds. And then for the visually impaired mixed pairs, we have Jacqueline Hudson with director Robert Hudson, and then Jake Felberg with director Cody Felberg.
Awesome.
The Wales team. Now, this was interesting because I could only find information on the men. They don't really have a team picture or anything like that. So you get a picture of Danny Salmon, one of their top guys. So Wales men, we've got Danny Salmon playing singles and pairs, Jared Breen playing pairs and fours, Owen Dando playing trips and fours, Chris Clefenzi, hopefully I got that right, trips and fours, and then Ross Owen playing trips and fours. And I think there's a picture of the Welsh team, the reigning Commonwealth gold medalists in pairs. So pretty strong team coming out of Wales there. New Zealand. For the men, we have Andrew Kelly playing singles and pairs, Sheldon Bagri Howley playing trips and fours, Tony Grantham playing pairs and fours, Chris Lelivra playing trips and fours, and Lance Pascoe playing trips and fours. And then their pair of pairs is Mark Noble and Darren Walland. And on the ladies' side, we have Tyler Bruce playing singles and triples, Alina Goddard playing pairs and fours, Caitlin Inch pairs and fours, Leanne Polson playing triples and fours, and then Val Smith playing triples and fours. And their pair of pairs is Julie O'Connell and Terry Blackburn. And Ireland, couldn't find any team pictures, but for the Ireland women, we've got Sarah Kelly, Ashley Rainey, Sophie McIntyre, Shauna O'Neill, and Chloe Wilson. And on the men, we have Martin McHugh, Gary Kelly, Adam McKeon, Ian McClure, and Stuart Bennett. And Team Malta. We have Wes Hedges, Peter Alol, Troy Lorimer, Peter Tana, and Jason Borg. On the ladies' side, we have Rita Hedges, Irene Addard, Connie Rickson, Rose Rickson, and Beck Rickson. And there are the teams so far. Some really strong teams, some recognizable names from other events. But what are your thoughts there, Mike?
Like you had an Irish ladies photo there. Was there an Irish ladies team announced?
Yes, I went through that. So yeah, Sarah Kelly. I think the picture might have been of Sophie McIntyre, but I'm not 100% sure because not all the pictures are labeled. I just was able to grab one of the female. But yeah, Sarah Kelly, Ashley Rainey, Sophie McIntyre, Shauna O'Neill, and Chloe Wilson.
Perfect. You know, I saw the photo and you quickly flashed through it, and I wasn't 100% sure if it was.
I flipped the photos. I did women first, men, and then I flipped the photos. Yeah. So yeah.
No. Okay. No. Today. Yeah, we're decent, pretty strong stream teams. Obviously, a lot of those that you announced, like Wales. Obviously, we got, as you're saying, defending Commonwealth Games pairs medal or gold medalists, and then Daniel Salmon's done really well in Australia in the past. For going to the Team Ireland, the men's team, I think half of those guys now live in Australia and play in Australia. I think a few of the other guys that did well at the Commonwealth Games have recently moved to to Australia. So they're actually a pretty solid group of guys that are consistently playing down in Australia. New Zealand women's team doesn't terribly surprise me because they had a pretty successful Commonwealth Games, and it's almost a commonplace team. I think they had one change of players there, which again, with how well they did at Commonwealth Games, I'm not surprised to see those announced, those teams there. So it'll be exciting. I think we probably going to have an announcement, hopefully out of Canada fairly soon, probably in the next couple of months. I think there's a camp or something I've heard maybe next month. And then I imagine we'll probably hear our team or have an announcement for Team Canada within the next little while. And I imagine some of those other nations like Scotland has Scotland and England announced their teams already?
Not that I could find. Scotland did sort of an announcement of their whole team, so like the mass thing they had a picture of, but not specifically for their World Bowls team. So I think that's still to be determined.
So yeah, we'll have that team, and I guess we're gonna have like South Africa, all those other nations. We're gonna have lots of news on the different teams being announced. Hopefully, Canada in that mix as well fairly soon. So I guess another topic we wanted to talk about, if you want to jump to it, is the recently, I guess it was yesterday or 2 days ago, it looked like the Oceania Challenge kicked off there. So a couple of shows ago, we started talking about the Oceania Challenge as a new event that they've started there to allow some of those Oceania nations the opportunity to play in some other events. Daryl's got specifics of who's exactly in it. I'll let you take it away.
I'm gonna butcher these names. This is gonna be fantastic. So, really cool event. Last night there was some mention about sort of an Americas style of event. I think World Bowls is really looking at building out some new, I'll say, niche events where it's not like a world event, it's a region event. So this one's Oceania, just to get some of those smaller nations that are kind of in and around Australia and New Zealand, all those really small South Pacific islands. I'll say quote unquote small, but smaller islands out there. So this is really cool. Okay. We'll start with the names. I apologize if I butcher this, but we've got the Aotearoa Maori team. And that Aotearoa is basically another name for the New Zealand island. I think it's more specifically the North Island, but they use that on the back of their shirts as well. Norfolk Island are competing, New Zealand, obviously. Cook Islands, Fiji, Niue, Tonga. Now, a country that I had actually never heard of before, and Mike had to look it up this morning, but it's Taukulau. And it's a group of islands out there in the South Pacific. So they're involved, which is really cool. And Samoa. Samoa, I believe, only has a men's team in it. But it's really cool. They had an opening ceremony. As you can see, all the nations there represented, which is really, really neat. I believe Cook Islands, they're famous for this. Doing kind of a sing and dance intro. I saw it at the Commonwealth Games. They did sort of that just out in the main area. It's really, really quite fantastic to see. So they did that. And then there's some action from them playing. So really neat event. You can go and check it out. I think I have the link in the description below, but you can go and check it out. I think Bulls New Zealand is posting all the results and their streams as well, if you want to go check that out too. And hopefully we get something like this for the Americas where, as a development for those smaller nations that we really need in the world of bowls, that kind of a thing can happen. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, there's really no way to start a competitive bowling group in a country without sort of having an outlet to actually play in. So a lot of these smaller nations or countries that are playing in this event are at least getting that opportunity to play, and then they're using it as a bit of a development event for their kind of aspiring players for New Zealand, essentially. So it's nice to see that an event like this came about. And then sort of in the chat, as you referenced last night, we had people talking about the Pan American Championships, or a name similar to that, which would be something along the lines of Argentina, Brazil, Jamaica, Canada, US. So essentially kind of any of the countries, obviously, that are in the Pan America region. So it'd be really cool if an event like that does come to fruition, because that's one of the major problems I see for Team Canada internationally, is that we pretty much play in just all these other events and don't really have kind of a regional event or feeder events where you can develop or have teams play together more often. We used to run the North American Challenge. It kind of seems like it's died a slow death or something along those lines, because we've heard very little about a North American Challenge for quite a long time now. So I'm very excited to see that event be worked on, and news of that it is being worked on, because it would be really cool to see an event similar to what we're seeing there at the Oceania Challenge sort of come about with the Pan Am one.
Well, we just got confirmation in the chat. Ian Howard, who is the World Bowls director for the Americas, so he is the guy, the big cheese for that event. And he says, get excited now. The Americas Challenge is April 2024. That's
there you
really
go.
exciting.
There you go. You heard it first on the Canadian Bowler podcast, the Pan American Challenge. or the Americas Challenge. I'll change that. It's a different name. April 2024. That's very cool to hear. I'm excited for that.
Reliable source. There you go.
I say, yeah, it's probably about as reliable of a source as we could ask for. Right?
Yeah. Speaking about America stuff, Mike,
yes.
you want to talk about one of the other exciting events that are in North America, the U.S. Open?
Yeah. So in the last few weeks, they announced and opened the entries for the U.S. Open, which will be occurring October 7th to the 14th, 2023 in California. So that's a big event. I've played in the U.S. Open myself, I think 3 times. I've only ever played in Arizona. I personally really like it when it's in Arizona because everything's really close together. Southern California is beautiful. I was recently there, and I visited a few of the greens in the San Diego area. San Diego is not part of this one, but as you can see, the names of all the different clubs. If you are interested in the U.S. Open, definitely get your entries in. I was looking at the forums, or I guess the list of who the entries are at this point. There's quite a few very good bowlers already entered into it. They've actually got quite a few entries in all the different disciplines. So if you've ever really considered traveling and wanting to play in a major event, the US Open is probably the top open event in North America, in my mind. It really is. You can put a team together, whoever you want to play with, and there's pretty good prize money if you end up doing well in any of the events. So if you are a bowler, you are aspiring to play in some top end events, even if you're from outside of North America, I've seen players travel in and they have a great time there because it is really top-notch competition. And the greens that you do get in Southern California are pretty quick, and they're usually pretty good quality as well.
I have to say, I mean, it's on my bucket list to go and play. I have never played in it. I've played down in Arizona, and the greens are fantastic. So on my bucket list, definitely got to go. So if you do go, any of you in the chat, I envy you right now. So
I think you've in the background talked about that we need to go and play in the US Open or something like that together. So
yeah.
maybe once our kids are a little older and we could sneak away from our wives for a little bit, we'll be able to go play in that ourselves.
That's right. Be more washed than we are now. That'll be perfect.
It'll be great.
Before we move on to, all that other junk that we don't really want to get to, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I forgot to put this in the headline, I think, but big news coming out of World Bowls. Gary Smith, the longtime director, chief operating officer for World Bowls, is retiring after 22 years of service in and around World Bowls. I've met him at a number of events. Really nice guy. Had great chats with him. Always remembers me, even though I only see him every once in a while. So that's always nice. He's obviously done a ton for bowls. Go check out World Bowls for a write up on him. He's, former champion, international champion. Been around bowls for a very, very long time. So I'm sad to see him go, but I hope whatever the next chapter in his life is, that it really goes well. He's done a lot for bowls, so hats off to him for a great career at World Bowls.
Yeah, 22 years. That's a pretty long career. So I would definitely recommend going and taking that right up. I also give that a read, and it's pretty interesting to see everything that he's done in his career. So you kind of lose track of people after they stop playing sometimes, as you're sort of saying. But then someone like him, who 22 years in amongst World Bowls, he's had quite a long career, and hope he enjoys retirement.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to retirement. That's not coming anytime soon.
You got a few more years. You're just like me. I don't even have gray in my beard yet. You, on the other hand, can at least attest that you have some gray in your beard. So maybe you're a little closer. But so was that all we really wanted to cover?
Yeah, it's a lot of events, a lot of news over the last little while, but that's it for the worldly news. And now we get to hear. I'm sure Mike has some opinions about the new 2024 changes. No.
We can just wrap up the show. Of course, I have opinions on the 2024 changes. I was watching just like anyone else who was in the chat. I think we had looked like 190 people watching at some point. So lots of interest across the country to get information about the changes because they are very significant changes. When I think you sent me the release when it first came out, it took me a good couple reads and a few hours of reading, like just to compress and like understand what was actually being said. It took me a good couple hours to understand and like breathe it in, I guess, because it is a massive shakeup on the way that we're going to be doing nationals in our country come next year. So I felt like our session was really beneficial because it allowed Bulls Canada to answer some of the questions that people had. Like we already talked about at the beginning of the show. I think it took me and you over the last week and a half, went through probably 5-6 different Facebook groups that there are and different threads and posts and gathered questions because we wanted to ask the questions to them and we wanted to even ask the tough questions to Bulls Canada because there's a lot of stuff people really don't understand or like, I guess would be the other part about these changes. So last night I felt a lot of those questions got asked and I myself had a couple questions that I needed to hear answered by Bulls Canada. So it was interesting to get some of those answers because I obviously didn't agree with some of the changes myself, and some of the answers we got I felt were a little lacking as well. So it was good though. I enjoyed you did a great job, Daryl. You were terrific. But yeah, like if we're sort of highlighting my opinions on the show from last night, like I didn't particularly enjoy so like the one thing I was hoping with the changes is that we were going to be able to have a little bit of dialogue about giving feedback or potentially tweaking things prior to it being actually implemented because we're still a year out. We're over a year out. And from what I was seeing on all the different threads and posts, it seems very common that most people want the set play to be longer because I personally have played a fair bit of set play myself going through the junior U25 system and shorter set play games statistically, you can even see the statistical analysis. Short games have lots of outliers. So you're going to have situations where someone throws a runner, they get a double wick, take the jack to the ditch on you, and they score a 4 type of a thing. If you're playing a short 5-end set game, that could literally seal a game. That would be the difference between them losing a set handily maybe and then barely winning a set type of a thing. So I personally don't enjoy that aspect of the change because I feel it's very short games, and an 11 end game would be the total length if you went to a tiebreaker. So it's very quick, very short. And then even with the answers we were given, I think the answers on the show was something along the lines of make all your shots count, that type of a thing. It's pretty hard to sometimes make all your shots really count in a sets play game because you really could win your first set 10-0, lose the second set 5-4, and then you lose that last tiebreak end, and you effectively still won the game point wise, like 15 or 14-2 or 14-5 or whatever it would be. So I didn't enjoy that part of it. They gave a bit of an explanation as about the time frames, everything like that, but that was my major gripe. And I didn't enjoy the explanation of essentially that they're not going to allow any sort of dialogue or tweaking prior to it coming out, and they're just going to run with it. And that the people are essentially just being force fed the changes, and they just want to go with it one time prior to potentially adjusting things that lots of people are obviously identifying as problematic.
I mean, I can't, I won't say that, you know, the criticisms are unfair. I mean, I understand where people are coming from, and that, you know, when you hear changes like this, especially big changes like this, are coming down, and essentially you have no say, no dialogue, no back and forth on, you know, oh, can we tweak this, tweak that? Like, I hear some people saying, like, you know, we want to change the whole thing. But even I think what you're saying is, you know, even considering, you know, changing it to a few more ends per set, or changing some of the games from sets to ends, one rather than sets, let's say, or extending the time a little bit. Like, all fair criticisms, I think this is all going to go into the feedback after, but yeah, that the first run of it, and knowing that this is coming in 2024 can be a tough pill to swallow. Being there myself, I mean, you can send your hate mail to me, because obviously I was part of the group that helped come up with this event, and I can honestly say that the group that put it together really did a lot of due diligence, thought it through. I mean, there was a ton of debate, conversations. I know I've raised a couple questions a number of times over length, and this is kind of what we came to. It's trying to fit it all into. I think it's, if you have 4 greens, it's 6 days, and if you have just 2 greens, it's 10 days of games, and trying to cut it all down into a time limit. I mean, we could tweak it up and down and left and right, and possibly find something similar. There's, I think it was said last night, there's like an infinite amount of possibilities, and people have tossed around ideas on all the forums. We even talked amongst ourselves about stuff that changes, but I think what it comes down to is we're trying to solve a couple major problems, and getting it down to this format in the time permitted. This is kind of what the group came up to. Hopefully, going forward, there'll be a time for feedback, there'll be a time for review, there'll be a time for discussion and changes. But for now, this seems to be the preferred way to go, rightly or wrongly. And I think, people have criticisms, and they're fair, but
Yeah, no. At this point, it's just trusting in the Bulls Canada overlords that they know what they're doing, and that they're actually steering us in the the right direction. Personally, like, it is, as I said earlier, it's a huge, massive change, and you're always going to have the battle between the purists and everything like that. And I just personally found it very disappointing that there's not an opportunity to potentially tweak any part of it at all, and that it's just, this is what it is and we're going with it. That was where I was a little taken aback, because I really feel a couple small tweaks, they're not even massive things that people want change, like maybe having that tiebreak set not be one end, like make it 3 ends or something along those lines. I feel like that makes the game much more indicative of the better player winning, rather than one end. You could have one bad end there in that tie break, and you, as I sort of went in there, you could still be winning 18-6 overall in the span of the overall score of the game, and then lose that tie break set and the one end. Like, yeah. So again, yeah.
fair. I mean, fair criticism, but just one thing on something you said. It's not like Bulls Canada is running this, and Bulls Canada has taken this idea and adopted it for the Canadians, but it wasn't like Anna and Jake, sitting in their houses, rubbing their hands together, saying like, "This is what we're going to do," and change it, and screw everybody else. It was a group effort. Like, Derek's in the chat saying, he was there and he's not a Bull Canada overlord. There was a lot of really good, smart, experienced bowlers from all over Canada that came together to discuss this. And other than asking about like things like financials and what was happening that caused all this stuff to happen, like the 7 events and so on and so forth, Anna kept out of it. She was mostly just answering questions that we had. So I want people to realize that like Bulls Canada equals bad doesn't help anybody. And I think the idea that that's out there, and some people just hate Bulls Canada, hate Bulls Canada. I mean, they're doing a lot of good stuff for the sport, whether you like it or not. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, no, like you're fair. I still reserve the right to call it the Bulls overlords. I personally enjoy that. that the way of looking at it, just because it is felt like it's a very top down type of thing. With like they kind of acknowledged there wasn't a very much dialogue with the provinces and everything like that as well. So that's sort of where I'm gonna. I guess me and you are gonna agree to disagree for once on the air here, where you obviously can see the way there it is there, and I think I sort of see it with the more populist group of people. But what I did take from the chat, personally myself, was that there's a lot of optimism and things that can be very good potential wise from the changes. A lot of like the points of opening up calendars, development and regional events and coaching, everything like that. That's obviously a huge door that's being opened, because the old system was very difficult to figure out how you're going to make all the different provincial events, all of your club events sort of work in one calendar year. It wasn't logistically very easy at all. And so I see that being a huge opportunity for this change going forward. A little bit of the cart before the horse type of a mentality, because I know there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done by the different provincial governing bodies, clubs, even Bowls Canada, I'm sure, is going to have to do a lot of work to try and facilitate a lot of this development they're talking about. So if you're an optimist, it's definitely a system change for you that's going to have lots of opportunities and lots of development streaks that I think are definitely going to occur, because I definitely see the opportunity for the coaching development and a lot of regional events being kind of popping up in the place of all these provincials that are now not part of the calendar.
So the big picture kind of stuff, I think people need to realize, like, I always got frustrated every single year, and I'm speaking about Ontario. I mean, you can talk about Saskatchewan, but I'm sure other provinces are similar. But Ontario is just back to back to back to back events right now. Like every weekend, there's something. I get a break for seniors and I get a break for youth, let's say, because I don't qualify. But if I wanted to play in like mixed pairs and some other stuff, it's just constant. And then if I want to put anything fun in there, anything fun, I'm cramming it in all those holes, which just means I'm playing all the time. I'm away, and that's obviously not ideal in my current situation, but probably not ideal for a lot of people. A huge thing that this hopefully will do for a lot of provinces is shrink those qualifiers down to 1, maybe 2 weekends at most, depending on what other stuff they want to run. I know right now, like, we've even created conflicts in our calendar in Ontario. WOBA and the youth qualifier in Ontario are on the same weekend, and that's awful, because it's one of the bigger tournaments that we want to promote in Ontario, conflicting with youth trying to win an Ontario youth championship and maybe get some money to go play in the Canadian. So try to get rid of some of those conflicts, open the door to development. I'm a regional coach for Ontario right now, trying to develop some stuff under that Bowls Canada umbrella with the other regional coaches, and try to develop for 2024 that regional competition and what it looks like. I don't know what it is yet. We're kind of brainstorming at the moment, but how are we going to get those under 25 players, those development players, those people who are really looking to get to the national team into these competitions, so they can be seen, they can get the experience. We can play Nova Scotia's development, or let's say Atlantic development, versus Ontario versus Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, and really get those mid-tier, I'll say, not national level, but those mid-tier events really firing for development. And like for me, I used to have to scramble to find nights where the club was open, to find a weekend open here and there, to try to run coaching clinics. People are away at provincials, and those people that want to get coaching are having to play. So in order for me to coach the people that want to play in provincials, you're cramming it into every single hole in the calendar. So I'm hoping that this really opens up for some opportunities. And I think you've mentioned it, and I don't know if you want to speak to this, but just the opportunities for provinces, industrious people, events that are already out there, to just to either make something really new or grow the Phoenix, grow your Premier League, or create a Premier League in your province. WOBA growing, Ladies 3-Day in Ontario growing. There's some really cool singles competitions out there in some of the provinces. They could grow, and maybe even be multiple days. Not that they don't have to cram it onto a Friday or the only open Saturday in July. I think there's just a lot of cool opportunities.
Yeah, no, you're catching on for sure. That's the main thing I took from it, is there's lots of optimism for if you're willing to make it the way you want it to be, if you have that gusto to take the initiative, there's lots of ability to do things going forward. So I'm excited for that aspect of it. You sort of touched on it in your monologue there, and I feel like we should talk about we should talk about it as well. As the one major part I was wanting information on was sort of the elimination of the indoor / the under 25s, and then now moving towards the selecting of players rather than sort of playing off for it. You being one of the regional coaches, how do you think how do you think that's going to kind of work? Because Canada, obviously, we're a very big region. You're going to have all these different regional coaches, and like I just personally see like that's going to be a huge problem to pick your players that are going to either a U25 event, because what region or which coach weighs more than the other for like their opinion on how a person's playing, everything like that. I just see it being a huge problem, and it's going to be creating lots of nepotism where we're just going to see kind of a person's getting picked because they're friends with this coach and this coach is the head coach type of a thing. So that's where I see maybe problems in their planning of things. What do you sort of see with that?
I mean, that's a fair question. It's something that we're going to have to really think about hard and develop something fair. I know a lot of people look at the national team now and don't quite understand selection, but the selection criteria is out there. And I'm not a selector now. I'm not part of the coaching high performance committee anymore, at least at the moment. But the selection criteria is out there to try to make it as clear and fair as possible. And I think we're going to have to develop the same thing for these other qualifying events. Now, this might be that as a regional coach, we need to get out and see people a lot more. And I would say for the high performance committee as well. And I think Ryan Stadnick talked to it a little bit last night that they need to do a much better job of just getting out to events, seeing people that they don't even know necessarily, and watching for some really good players who they can give the nudge to and say, hey, you did fantastic in these events and you've really had a great year. Why don't you think about doing something or putting your name forward? I think there'll probably have to be some sort of a show of interest that people want to go. You can't just pick somebody and they just say, no, thanks, like too much or whatever. But if somebody wants to go and thinks they're good enough to go, then put your hand up and then we can make sure that we're out to see you. We can go and work with you, do some coaching and whatnot. And I think this is where some of those really cool competitions can come into play. Like I'm hoping that, just because of the loss of the Canadian Indoor Championships doesn't mean that there can't be a really cool big indoor championship still. There's the opportunity to make some really interesting things like singles or pairs or whatever format that you want to make it, and go and see people there. Have our coaches go out there and see people actually playing on actual indoor, doing the indoor thing. And for under 25, we're hoping to push them into those team games. See them play, see them connect with people, see what they're doing, and try to choose the best player. I mean, it's trying to weigh that that current skill with the development opportunity, because I think it is a great development opportunity. The World Under 25, go out, see other under 25s, develop your game, see what it's like at an international stage. So it's going to be a tough one, but I think we're going to have to really put our heads down and try try to come up with a really fair way to find the right person to send, or the right two people, I guess, male and female.
Yeah, no, you cover it there. The dagger in the heart of BC, the loss of the indoor. I think that's probably a big issue for a lot of people from specifically BC. A bit of the reasoning we got in the chat last night was I felt lacking personally. I felt like they could have elaborated a little more on why the indoor is really disappearing, because I think the excuse was that it's a bit of a regional event and that there's only 4 or 5 provinces usually at that event. When if we look at the last nationals, I think there was only maybe 6 or 7 provinces. So we're not really doing a terrifically better job for our major nationals, let alone the indoor. And I think we had probably 4 different provinces medal at the last indoor championship. So it's a tough one to lose, because it's always great to have the players play down on an indoor surface. Then this person is very good on an indoor, can go play internationally and do well. I really struggle with selecting the person now, even with if we develop the regionals, if an event took its place sort of in the indoor, I feel like it could be a situation where you might be sending someone who's not as prepared to play on an indoor surface to go and play internationally against the world-class indoor players and potentially have a very negative time. So it's tough. I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. And I think the main culprit for why we're seeing the indoor go away is the budget cuts. Sort of the things that we're talking about at the beginning of the show is the main motivation behind this all is there was significant financial issues with having all of these different championships. And I think that standalone championship on the west coast of Canada every year is a tough one to keep running, and it's probably a very expensive event. I don't know the specifics behind it, but that's what I suspect was the actual reasoning. But we didn't get that actual response from Bulls Canada, so that's just Mike spouting his own ideas. But
yeah, I don't have any numbers to drop here, or facts and figures, but like at the end of the day, the toughest thing for the committee when we were chatting about it is the fact that we're dropping events. Obviously, the indoor is a big thorn in some people's sides and a big talking point. But we dropped the seniors in the mixed pairs as well. And yeah, I mean, for me, it just came down to cuts, and it sucks. There's not enough money to do 7 events across the whole thing. When you have to cut some stuff, sometimes you lose something that you really, really like. And people love there's a group of people that love the indoor. There's a group of people that love mixed, and obviously those that compete in the seniors love the senior. I love the mixed. I love playing in the mixed. And I hated it when I couldn't play in it the last couple of years, and now it's gone. So I might not play in it again. But I think people need to understand this is not a never say, like, it's never say never. I would fully expect the indoor to come back once if the progress is made that is expected in some of that area. It may take a little while, but I suspect it'll be back. The mixed, if we start to see growth in our player pool and expenses start to go, maybe the mix will be back and the seniors. But right now, in the situation we're in, where we're just dumping money, it's like throwing coal on a fire just to keep things going, just isn't working. So like for me, at the end of the day, it just came down to how can we make this a sustainable event, and then let's see where we go in the future. I didn't think everything would be gone forever, but right now it's a really hard pill to swallow, especially when you see it and you say, oh, that's gone. I used to play in that. That's gone. That's the only event I played in. It sucks. I mean, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. It does suck.
Yeah, for me, it's just hard to see the doors shut, I guess, when we still have the logistics, everything there, to see that door shut. Like John and Derek are both going at me in the chat there. So my response to what I'm seeing from the two of them there is the lack of a surface in the East doesn't mean that you should be shutting that door completely. So the fact that we don't have an indoor surface anywhere else except, well, there are sort of surfaces in Ontario, but like not an official full length, whatever you want to call it, indoor, anywhere east of BC. It's not a reason for you to shut an event off and completely stop doing it. It just doesn't really make sense if you have the surface, everything there. I understand the problems that it creates for someone in the east to get all the way to BC, but it's not a reason that we should just shut an event off necessarily, just because there isn't a surface in the east. It's kind of an opposite way of problem solving, where if you just, yeah, I don't agree with that argument whatsoever, just because we have the surface. The event has been played. We've had lots of people be successful internationally who play on that indoor all the time, and that's just the way I personally see it. And it's just a very hard pill to swallow, as you said.
Yeah, I think just the bottom line is cutting costs. It's trying to get this down to a workable event that Bowls Canada can actually put some money behind. And I think there's opportunities for whatever club eventually hosts it to, get that legacy of improving greens, better equipment, better infrastructure, you name it, that they need to be done, as well as connections to city, province, PSO, whatever it is, building that whole network and then leaving a legacy of strength in that club, and then hopefully keep doing that for a couple years at a time at different places. And I'm hoping that with this, and with us seeing some savings and seeing some progress in this, that we'll be able to build out some more events. And one thing that Derek said, like, the PBA in the East, there's something that would be a really cool opportunity, is let's blow up the PBA. It is a small kind of thing, but maybe now there's opportunity to start expanding that and make it a bigger presence in Canada. And you've got, they play on the blue carpet overseas, so you've got the indoor in BC. Let's make it a thing, and get them rocking and rolling, because they should have a leg up by playing on indoor, going over to the blue carpet and playing on indoor again. So it would be really cool to see some really cool, innovative events happen in place of seniors. Let's see a Masters event. Somebody, take that up, and I'm sure they can make some money on it and get some real good interest. Mixed pairs could be its own thing. An open event, if somebody is really industrious and wants to tackle that. And then things like PBA Phoenix, WOBA, Vancouver and District, Atlantic Championships, they can all become even more important and possibly even bigger than they have in the past. That would be really cool to see, personally.
Yeah, no, you make very good points there. Like Derek, the Bulls Canada overlord, he has essentially kind of stated it correctly there, is that someone can take over the indoor championship, create a different indoor championship, as you're saying, replace the mixed pairs with your own event, Masters event, whatever you want to call them. So there's holes in the calendar now, so the opportunity is there. And I think for anyone who's industrious enough to really give it a shot come 2024, that I do see lots of new events or new opportunities for people to play in different things will be popping up. So that part of it will be exciting.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I really, the OPL in Ontario, it came, and it was the first Premier League kind of thing that we tried, and it kind of fell apart, and we haven't seen it since. But a lot of it came down to scheduling. A lot of teams were just trying to find nights where they could connect to play a game, and then we tried cramming it down to one weekend. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for some really cool Premier League style stuff like the APL. And who knows, down the line, if enough provinces get Premier Leagues going between their clubs, you could have a Premier League championship somewhere, and that would be really cool to see.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better.
I'm gonna throw something out there. If anybody can create a masterboard type event, I would love to play in one. Multiple teams, you have one masterboard. It's all your teams, your scores go up, and whoever has the highest score across all the teams wins. That'd be kind of cool to play in.
Never heard of an event like that before, so you're just blowing my mind talking about something like that. So
yeah,
there you go, Daryl.
it's out there, and I know some people out there know about it. I saw it down in Australia, being played where it's across teams. So you have four forest teams. It's pennant in Australia, as Derek said. Um, so it's like pennant. You have all your teams out there, and at the end of the game, whether you won or lost your game, it's overall. Um, this team won. Well, it's like Helensvale versus Broadbeach Bulls. The net of all the teams, whoever gets the positive wins. It's a really cool event, and you're watching other greens, you're watching other scores. It's really exciting. So that would be cool if I could, if anybody wanted to try to create something like that.
Maybe the Dreamboat Daryl Open or something like will occur out there in Ontario. I'm not sure.
We'll work on it. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've adequately expressed my angst towards Bulls Canada and the changes that were made. I hope, being a man of the people, that I covered most of the points that I struggled with in the changes. But again, I think we've both expressed we're pretty optimistic about the changes, so the opportunity they present. We may not agree with some of the formats, sort of the way that it's been filtered down to the people and how exactly they're rolling it out. I'll definitely again state I don't agree with how it's being done, but again, lots of optimism moving forward because there is so much opportunity going forward once 2024 comes. So.
Well said. Yeah. Whether you like it or not, whether you have questions or not, hopefully a lot of those things get answered over the next little while. And change is good. Change doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to threaten the way that you do bowls. Things at your club are still run the same as they do. But hopefully this leads to a more positive future going forward. That's really the idea, right?
And if you are here, you want to get those answers direct, you can definitely, we've stated it before, check that video out from last night. So it's a very informative video, top to bottom. You're going to get a lot of questions answered and asked to that panel. So I do recommend checking that video out if you have not already seen it, because there's lots of important info there for 2024. And if you're here, definitely hit like, comment, subscribe, everything you can on that video, this video, whatever. We do appreciate any interactions we can get. We're pretty good about responding to comments, except for when Derek Dillon's threatening a lawyer on me and things like that. So we'll just ignore that comment, and he can come after me for libel or whatever he wants to come after me for. But we do appreciate any sort of interactions on our videos that we get. Anything else you wanted to cover today, Daryl?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, thanks for everybody for tuning in last night. It was a really cool event and something, a bit of a milestone for our channel, having something that big and important. Like we said, this channel is about talking about bowls, making sure that your voice is heard, really doing innovative stuff and talking about what's going on in the world. So hopefully that we can keep pushing bowls towards the future. That's the idea, right? So thank you.
Yeah, I was I was thinking about our sign off. May all your bowls be touchers, I guess, with 5 end sets coming up. That's really important. All your bowls really do need to be touchers going forward. So even more emphasis, guys. So may all your bowls be touchers.